Hello everyone, and welcome to this episode number 40 of Helium's Frequently Asked Questions, which I must tell you are not very frequent anymore indeed, but well, I really wanted to talk to you about something that I find absolutely exceptional that I wanted to share with you. It turns out that Helium, well, is for the first time a deflationary chain and maybe even the first blockchain to be deflationary. Honestly, I had never heard of this before, and it's an event I wanted to share with you. And it's thanks to something called the Burn&Mint equilibrium. So for those who follow Helium, you must know, you may have already heard about what the Burn&Mint equilibrium is. It's a principle that is important in the Helium blockchain. Since Helium, well, it's a blockchain that provides a service like most DeepIn. So here, I'm bringing you to review some videos if you don't have all the vocabulary I just provided. But basically, it's a blockchain movement aimed at having activities linked to the physical world and thus providing services in the physical world. And among other things with the connected objects, but not only, since we also have things related to network infrastructure, for example. In short, in Helium, the service we provide is telephony. Yes, that's a bit crazy, meaning Helium is a chain that actually serves a purpose. And I won't hide from you that in the crypto world today, that's almost rare, so it should be noted. Well, Helium is a system that allows for providing a decentralized network, a telecom network for connected objects, and also for making calls like you're used to. Well, it doesn't exist in France, it doesn't exist in Europe. Maybe that's why you haven't really heard about it. On the other hand, it exists in the United States, and there it is really growing. So the principle, since we have a service, what leads us to do Burn&Mint equilibrium is to say that a service, well, we will pay per use. And when we pay per use, we won't pay with crypto because it's not necessarily very practical. So we will pay with dollars, and we will pay in the form of a subscription, roughly speaking. And this subscription will correspond to data that we will transfer, and that's actually what is built on the network. These are data exchanged with people who provide the network and people who consume the network, supply and demand. So the principle of the Burn&Mint equilibrium is that to use this network, we will need to buy communication credits, and to buy communication credits, we will need to destroy crypto. On one side, we have the burn, the destruction of crypto linked to usage, and on the other side, we have the mint. Well, it's what we know in all blockchains. It's the fact of working on the blockchain and in our case providing network coverage. And well, that's going to create mining. And so every day there will be a certain amount of tokens that will be distributed by the blockchain to those who participate. So an inflationary blockchain, that's the most classic case. It's a blockchain in which every day tokens are created. And this means that overall, if on day one you own 1% of the tokens that are available and thus 1% of the blockchain's capitalization, on day two you have less than 1%, and so your value will normally decrease unless the capitalization increases, which potentially happens through speculation, allowing you to break even. So when you are a miner, well, you receive new tokens every day from mining, which should normally help you partly fight against this inflation phenomenon. But otherwise, if you just own tokens, you risk facing this inflation phenomenon. So the principle of deflation is the opposite. That is to say, overall in the blockchain, well, today there are fewer tokens than yesterday, and tomorrow there will be fewer tokens than there are today. Well, that's what happened for the first time in the Helium blockchain. While we are in a distribution phase of minting, which is still significant, even with a halving that took place in August, we are still very, very far from the total token distribution, which spans 30 years, So what happened is that, in fact, the number of tokens destroyed by the use of the network was greater than the number of tokens produced related to the principle of mining, which is regular. And so that's a change that is extremely important. That means that the blockchain today, right now, has its value, which is rather low. That's one of the reasons we're here. And yet it has reached a balance point where supply and demand, the consumption of services compared to the issuance of tokens, have balanced and even slightly unbalanced since tokens have been destroyed. So that's still a particularly important event. If we were in a traditional company, I would tend to say that, well, we've reached the break-even point in a way. So that's the break-even in a way on the network. So that's still relatively notable. And objectively, I don't know if this has happened on another blockchain. Let me know in the comments if you know of other examples of deflationary chains. But personally, it's the first time I've seen this, and in the crypto world, well, I find it amazing and I want to share it with you. So I'm going to explain the mechanisms a little bit and then, understand why we have this effect in a bit more detail. So the mechanisms are as follows. It was said that when using the Helium service, we would consume data and that this data would be converted into the destruction of HNT. In fact, what we do is that this data corresponds to a volume of money since we pay per kilobyte, and this volume is in dollars. And for that, we use a utility token called the DC for data credit, which actually corresponds to a number of data credits relative to an amount in dollars. And it is fixed in dollars. This is what makes my telecom subscription cost me the same amount every month based on the traffic I consume, regardless of the token's value. And so, to issue these data credits, HNT must be destroyed. So if I want to issue $10 of data credits, I must destroy $10 of HNT. In this case today, well, the price of HNT is rather low since it's around $2, $2.30 per token. And so that means to obtain HNT from here, we will generally burn quite a lot of HNT. So how much do we need from here to support the communication and the service that exists today? In fact, today, every day, $50,000 of HNT are destroyed. Because every day, in fact, we consume communication worth $50,000. And this is linked to the fact that we have significant growth in the number of users since, as you can see, the number of users has been quite exponential in recent months, with very strong growth that also leads to an increase in consumption, which is natural on the network. So, that leads to a significant amount, $50,000, which results in destroying a certain number of HNT, as HNT is around $2, $2.30. Well, roughly speaking, we destroy more than 20,000 HNT every day. Now, what is happening is that the mining principle means that at the moment, what the network distributes to the miner is 20,000 HNT. And so you see that we are at a point where we are on the edge, where we will destroy more HNT than we create every day. And this has been going on for several days. And the lower the HNT price, the more we will destroy. So it is still a relatively interesting event linked by two phenomena. The first is a strong increase in the consumption of HNT related to the burn, and on the other side an HNT price that remains quite low, which creates this imbalance because it is not very logical in itself to destroy HNT on the chain so quickly. It's just the conjunction of these two phenomena. Logically, with this very strong growth in network usage, which represents an influx of money into the system of several million per year, the logic would suggest that the token's value should increase. However, in fact, the value has been completely flat or even decreasing for weeks and weeks. And so, well, at some point, the increase in usage plus the decrease in the token price brings us to this intersection where, instead of creating tokens, we will destroy tokens, and we move from an inflationary chain to a deflationary chain. There you go. So this is a momentum that will probably not necessarily last, because we can still hope that the token's valuation will increase. In any case, it would be logical. But in any case, as long as the token is not recognized and does not grow, we will continue to destroy the token until we find a balance point that will lead to its growth. So this is something fundamentally different from what you find on many other blockchains, and in my opinion, fundamentally interesting. That's why I really want to share this important moment in the Helium blockchain with you, so you are aware of it. If we look to the future, and note, there is no investment advice in this, it's just a thought and a projection to say that growth is really going to increase a lot in data. Today, we can say that there aren't too many reasons for it to stop, at least not in the short term, so that's rather good news. And then in the coming years, we have a halving. Usually, the halving doesn't have a strong impact on blockchains. Well, we hope that it will drive the value of the token because it reduces the supply daily, and for mining costs that are still about the same, right? That's particularly true for Bitcoin, so it tends to push things upward overall. But here, it's interesting because the halving, you see, suddenly doubles this effect of the link, the gap between what is needed in the number of tokens to create the service and then the daily token supply, which is suddenly halved. So a halving effect can suddenly have a very significant deflationary impact when it occurs, and that is also an important factor. I find these elements to be very positive for the future of the token. I unfortunately think that it's really not well known in the community. No doubt this mechanism is a bit complex compared to the mechanisms we're used to. So, well, not everyone understands it, so I hope this video will help to better understand it and to better perceive how Helium works and this little particularity. And then this maybe uniqueness, well, it seems to me, of having a deflationary token for the first time in crypto.
Well, listen, thank you for listening to me as usual. To follow what's going to the next videos, don't hesitate to subscribe. There are 40 videos before if you are new to the channel. So if you want to understand Helium a bit better, there are a lot of videos explaining how it all works. And well, in the meantime, I wish you a good weekend for those who are on the weekend, and otherwise, well, enjoy. Ciao, bye.